Chip Tam in football. That's what Pittsburgh does. What's up, everybody? Brian Batko with you from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, one of our Steelers beat writers. And today, ahead of Steelers Seahawks Week 2 home opener at Acrisure Stadium, I'm going to be joined by another former Post-Gazette beat writer, but not on the Steelers, our former Pirates beat writer, Andrew Destin, who has since moved on to the Pacific Northwest. He's now covering sports in Seattle for the Associated Press. Was at the Seahawks Week 1 loss to the 49ers on Sunday. He's been out there for a little bit now, so excited to reunite with Andrew and get his thoughts on the team that is making the trek to Pittsburgh on Sunday. First, though, as always, we are brought to you by Pella. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than from Pella. They can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule your free in-home consultation with your local Pella windows and doors to find the right product for your home and your budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. We'll be right back with Mr. Destin. All right, there he is, late of the Post-Gazette, Andrew Destin. I know we've got hopefully some avid viewers and readers across sports at the PG, but also maybe a lot of Steelers-only watchers on the YouTube channel that did not get to enjoy the dulcet tones of you on our Pirates shows. How's it going, man?
Doing well, yeah. Greetings from Virginia Mason Athletic Center here, the Seahawks practice facility out in the Seattle suburbs. So it's great to chat with an old Post-Gazette friend, Brian. But it's great just to talk about football. And I haven't done this in a StreamYard capacity since I covered Penn State football. So it's fun to get back on the Post-Gazette airwaves here.
Nice. Well, I know you and Noah were quite the tag team for us back in the day. Which was like 6 months ago now, Andrew?
Yeah.
Seems like you've been gone forever. That's how much we miss you. Every time I see the Seahawks facility name, I have to remind myself that they don't practice in the state of Virginia, and that is just what they call it. But all right, well, we'll get to some of what you heard from the Seahawks headquarters later. Start with your first Seahawks game you've covered, regular season game, Sunday against the 49ers. In Seattle, just based on the box score, was not pretty, was it?
No, not pretty with Brock Purdy. No, but it was, I couldn't help myself there. It was an interesting one in that the Seahawks defense was, excellent in the bend not breaks form. They did a great job of making sure the 49ers couldn't get all the way down the field. And if they got into the red zone, the issues with Jake Moody kicking really came back to bite the 49ers, nearly undid them entirely. But, not a great game offensively for the Seahawks with debuting the new offensive coordinator and Clint Kubiak, new quarterback and Sam Darnold, without DK Metcalf, without Tyler Lockett. It's a very different offense these days. They want to be better at running the football. They didn't do a great job of running the football on Sunday, which certainly is not going to be to their benefit moving forward here. So offensively speaking, a lot to be left to be desired for the Seahawks, but on the defensive side, some certainly notable things that showcase themselves in a defensive struggle of a game, but the Seahawks certainly are a competent team at the very least. I think this is a squad that is going to be hovering around 500, if not a little bit above it. I'm curious to see how they will match up against a Steelers team that, following from afar, very different from last year's Steelers team, it looks like, but the Seahawks squad is very much their goal is they want to be playing mistake-free football with a bend not break defense.
Now, were you around the Seahawks much in like OTAs, minicamp, and training camp, or were you more doing Mariners, or were you kind of like getting a fresh slate, a fresh look at them on Sunday?
Yeah, it was able to cover them for a good amount throughout OTAs, certainly more so in training camp. But I've been hanging around the facility, keeping tabs on what's been going on with them. Really in terms of the Seahawks, what we've kind of seen is just a team that is kind of in transition, for lack of better phrasing. Offensively speaking, it has been a little bit of a grind. There have been some moving parts. Kenneth Walker III, the running back, has missed a lot of time in the offseason because of an ankle injury. So that kind of reared its head on Sunday, where you could see that he wasn't quite operating at 100%, or at least wasn't being used to the full degree that he could be. But yeah, I mean, I've been following the team for a good part the last 4 or 5, 6 months, kind of keeping tabs on them. And they seem to be in a spot right now where they are gelling, but it's going to take more time than just a week 1 game, especially with so many different moving parts on the offensive side of the ball in particular.
So you weren't necessarily surprised that it was a little slow out of the gate with a new play caller, new QB and Sam Darnold. And obviously, I think the 49ers are probably their biggest rival in football.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of do the old Noah Hiles throw the record books out the window
Yep.
when the two
Right.
teams met. And I'm guessing it was a physical game where both teams were sort of banging their heads against the wall.
Yeah, 100% that. And also, I think it's worth noting that with the 49ers, with Robert Saleh being in his first year back as defensive coordinator for the 49ers, you can see the difference that made over, I believe it was Nick Sorensen was last year's defensive coordinator for the 49ers. He only lasted a season. What Saleh brought to the table really messed with the Seahawks, a unit that is still trying to kind of find its identity and figure out its way with a new quarterback, OC, some new, some new spots on the offensive line as well, with a new center and a left guard. So there's tons of moving parts there. But I think you have to give credit and give it where it's due to the defensive side of the ball, which is that, yeah, Robert Saleh, very good defensive coordinator. Maybe not necessarily the best of head coaches in the NFL based on his stint with the Jets, but I think that in the rivalry game setting, like you mentioned, where it brings out the best of both teams, a 49ers team that fell well short of expectations last year going 6-11, we certainly saw them rise to the occasion in the big moments. And that defense last week, this past Sunday, it was pretty legit for the 49ers. That was a real good showing.
How'd Sam Darnold look? Because honestly, I'm one of the people who wasn't so much buying the Darnold renaissance last year and thought that was more of really good team around him in the Vikings, really good head coach, play caller on offense in Kevin O'Connell. So I didn't necessarily anticipate that he would have the same kind of success with Seattle. It's only been 1 week, but what did you see from Darnold, Andrew, and what kind of things can we expect from him Sunday against the Steelers, who were leaking oil against obviously a much different quarterback in Justin Fields, but a Jets offense that put up 32 points, looked a lot more dynamic than I expected.
Right, and a quarterback that Steelers fans are quite familiar with in Justin Fields. With Darnold, I thought he looked okay. Not great by any means. I think he was only 150 yards that he passed for. Relatively mistake-free football, aside from the end of the game where he had the strip sack, where had an offensive lineman, Abe Lucas, pushed into him by Nick Bosa and dropped the football. But in terms of what we saw,
the Steelers don't have any pass rushers who get a lot of strip sacks against quarterbacks.
Right.
So
certainly not. But I thought Darnold looked okay. I think he, kind of to your point of last year, the supporting cast in Minnesota with O'Connell and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and people like that, I think that it was definitely a better supporting cast there than what he is currently working with in Seattle. That being said, he did do a fine job of frequently targeting Jackson Smith-Njigba, who I believe had 9 catches for 124 yards. The problem is that no other receiver outside of Smith-Njigba had more than 15 yards. And that includes Cooper Kupp, who they brought in on a 3-year, $45 million deal, thought that he would be a guy who could slide back in here and do a fine job on the receiving end of kind of recapturing his previous form, despite some banged-up seasons the last few years. Kupp, how did he look first week? Kind of a non-factor. So I think that says less about, I think what we saw on Sunday is less about Darnold and perhaps more about the guys around him. Tight end is relatively unproven after they moved on from Noah Fant. Running backs are a little bit banged up. The offense is not necessarily going to be able to run the ball up the gut at will. On the perimeter, it's not easy. It's Jackson Smith-Njigba is more of a slot guy. They don't have that DK Metcalf guy anymore. He's in Pittsburgh. They don't have Tyler Lockett, who is as sure-handed of a guy and as reliable of a guy as they could possibly turn to. So I think what you're kind of looking at here with Sam Darnold is, he's capable. He can be a game manager. He can be a little bit more than that, but it is really kind of contingent on the parts around him. And right now we're not seeing a huge boatload of, wow, these are top-tier, elite, all-pro guys or guys who are still currently in that all-pro form. That's not necessarily the case anymore.
Yeah. Last thing I'll ask you about that game, how did the pass rush look? Because the Steelers, and specifically left tackle Broderick Jones, they had their share of struggles protecting Aaron Rodgers against the Jets. How much juice does DeMarcus Lawrence have left in the tank? And is Boye Mafe going to be a bigger name floating through NFL circles this season?
Minnesota legend Boye Mafe. No, so I
He was
think
the guy
that
who said he was when he got drafted by the Seahawks. He was like he likes salmon and he looks forward to having salmon out there in the Pacific
yep,
Northwest. I think that was him.
I believe that's exactly right. I remember in 2019, I called a Penn State Minnesota football game for student radio, and I thought Boye Mafe. I was like, wow, this guy's really good. And then that story came about many years later. I'm like, that's hysterical. Wish I had known that
Yeah.
for the old broadcast. But um, so I think what we're looking at in terms of on that side, I think what you're looking at there with the pass rush for the Seahawks is that there are amply capable guys, whether it's DeMarcus Lawrence, Leonard Williams, Leo Williams. There are certainly guys who are capable of getting after the quarterback, Boye Mafe, Derick Hall, but it's not necessarily one guy that stands out as that's the elite edge rusher who you are going to just pair him against Broderick Jones and he'll win that fight every time and get 3 sacks. It's a solid pass rush. You're probably noticing a recurring theme here when it comes to the Seahawks. A lot of things are solid. There's not necessarily a huge, gigantic, titanic weakness. So are they going to get to Rodgers maybe once or twice? Sure. Does his lack of mobility maybe benefit the Seahawks? Absolutely. But I would not be confident in saying that, okay, this is a pass rush that is going to wreak havoc, that's going to be like what the Jets did last week and holding the Steelers to what was it, 50 rushing yards or something like that? Like
Yeah,
this
I mean,
front.
obviously they didn't need it much with Aaron Rodgers slinging it and dialing up a bunch of big plays off play action, but not a great start for Jalen Warren, Kenny Gainwell, Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, so those factors included, I don't anticipate this front seven to be quite as efficient at or quite as effective at limiting the run, but maybe they'll do a better job of getting home. And the secondary, I would say that for the Seahawks is pretty solid relative to what we've seen from the Jets, barring the injury to Nick Emanwari, the rookie second round pick that they got out of South Carolina, who's banged up, and it remains to be seen whether he's going to play on Sunday.
Well, they parlayed DK Metcalf into that pick. So we are going to
Yeah.
discuss the Seahawks secondary further and certainly the DK factor when we come back with Andrew. First, if you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky, and White. For more than 40 years, their firms represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. All right, Andrew. Mike Tomlin did say he sort of alluded to what you mentioned there, that the Seahawks secondary is probably the strongest part of their team. Now, we'll see if that's some bulletin board material for the front seven if they're looking for slights this week, or if Mike McDonald is trying to go to every club in his bag against his former rival when he was the DC for the Ravens. But clearly the biggest storyline of this week, Andrew, involves the Seahawks secondary, because they're going to be the ones tasked with trying to, you don't really stop a guy like DK Metcalf, but maybe you can slow him down. How much chatter has there been in the city or in the locker room about facing him this week? I know you mentioned a lot of guys who are gone from last year's Seattle offense, Geno Smith, Noah Fant, but the only one that's going to be on the other sideline Sunday is DK.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned the chatter in the city. I mean, people are constantly saying that the Seahawks lost the trade, right? They traded Andrew Destin for DK Metcalf. It was really a poor trade. No,
Round
but
pick, but there could be years before they see dividends there.
right. I mean, you'll have to ask the Associated Press if they're pleased with the progress so far. But no, so frankly, I think that the city is probably more where the chatter is stemming from, just because this is a guy who was a little bit of a polarizing character in the sense of immensely talented, did produce at a high level at times, but was not necessarily, given his God-given abilities and work ethic and physique and all those things, was DK Metcalf the true bona fide number one receiver at all capacities that the Seahawks hoped of him? Maybe not necessarily on every aspect or every season or every game, things like that. But it's very clear that they would wish that they still had him, at least in terms of the Seahawks faithful, or the 12s as they call themselves.
Right.
So when it comes to what's going on right now in the for the Seahawks, in the locker room, you talk to guys like Leonard Williams. I chatted with Shaquille Griffin for a little bit during the locker room access. Yeah, these guys are motivated. Yeah, they're excited. There's even maybe a feeling of, thank God this game is week 2 versus week 14 or something, where it's constantly you're looking ahead to it, and you can maybe bypass whatever opponent you've got ahead, like a Rams game or Cardinals or what have you. So I think the sentiment is that, yeah, he was a hell of a player that they were really grateful to have in Seattle for a number of years. That being said, he's no longer in the building. There are a lot of moving parts. NFL teams, not for long. There's a reason that's what the league stands for. It's not the same team that it was last year. To your point, there is no Geno Smith. There is no Tyler Lockett. There are a lot of key contributions or key contributors on the scene who weren't here last year in the Emerald City. So, yeah, people are hyped up for this. I think people are really excited, but in the sense of, is this going to be bulletin board material? Maybe not quite to the same degree. I think it's more so that, hey, they've got this guy here in DK Metcalf who has a lot of ties. It's going to motivate them, but I don't think they're viewing this as some Titanic revenge game in the way that maybe it could be made out to be.
Mike McDonald get asked about it all? I mean, I know he was obviously there last year. I think DK made some comments on Marshawn Lynch's podcast this offseason that he didn't feel like his voice was always heard, in the offensive meeting rooms. But of course, they have a new offensive coordinator as well. So I guess some of those things are not as much of a sticking point, but clearly 1 year with McDonald, and whether it was him or above him in the front office, they decided to go a different direction and sort of put more eggs in the Jackson Smith and Jigba basket.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, yes, Mike McDonald was asked about it today, and a fascinating question actually from Mike Sean Duggar from The Athletic, fine writer for The Athletic who covers the Seahawks. He asked him about the offensive coordinator search. That originally there was a key component to it is there going to be somebody who can adequately include DK Metcalf in the game plan, somebody who can incorporate him.
Yeah.
Yeah, maximize him. Back in January when they agreed to a deal to bring Clint Kubiak in as the offensive coordinator. 2 months later, things changed drastically, and DK Metcalf was headed towards Seattle or headed towards Pittsburgh. So I think what you're looking at here is, yeah, absolutely. It's not it's not an offense that may be maximized into the way that they wanted to, but the chatter is that, yeah, they have a lot of respect for DK Metcalf. There was certainly a period of time where they thought that with the new offensive coordinator, with Kubiak coming in, that they were going to be able to maximize Metcalf. He was going to be a big component of it. Now you flash forward to now, things have obviously changed. They've put a lot more eggs in the Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp basket. It's a very, very different dynamic on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, just from talking to DK in the locker room Wednesday, he tried to take a page out of Aaron Rodgers' playbook from last week in the ultimate revenge game against the Jets. And he basically just said, preparing for it like it's any other game, it's any other opponent, doesn't mean anything more. Kind of find that hard to believe. DK actually got a little miffed that I kept asking him about it, but we cleared the air on that, so we're all good. I'm not trying to make an enemy out of someone who's going to be here for the next 5 years, and also could throw me across the Steelers locker room like a stuffed animal if he ever wanted to. So I think we're good. But bottom line, Andrew, if it comes up again later this week, DK has tunnel vision and didn't want to feed the beast whatsoever as far as the storylines, the fan attention on this. And I guess two positives for him, like you said, for the Seahawks, it's early in the season. You kind of get that out of the way, much like Aaron Rodgers got the Jets anticipation out of the way in the opener. At least this game also is in Pittsburgh, not Seattle, or else I'm sure the 12s, they might give him a good ovation, but then I think they'd probably be letting him have it if there were a drop, penalty, anything like that.
Oh, yeah. Especially what I'm most looking forward to watching from my couch on a Sunday morning is the Devin Witherspoon matchups against DK Metcalf, because
he's an ornery one, isn't he?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how privy to the Steelers fans are, but Witherspoon is known to chat, not necessarily with the media folks. He's pretty reserved with us, but when he's on that practice field or when he's in the games, the words start flying. He knows how to get under some receivers' skins. And that was something actually that talked about with Shaquille Griffin, was the idea that, yeah, Witherspoon in the past, they had plenty of matchups or against one another in practices where it was best on best and things like that. So excited to see that come to fruition. We'll get to see that finally in person here in Seattle or there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and that's basically what I told Dave. Like, hey, this is a huge storyline. fans want to know about this stuff. Obviously it's football, it's sports, but you guys are superstars too, and I think it makes it fun. I think it adds a juicy element to a game like this, and especially when you couple, the DK factor with, like you said, Devin Witherspoon, who's really ascended to one of the best young cornerbacks in football. This could be a statement game for him. DK went against Sauce Gardner last week with the Jets, and they got into it after the whistle once or twice, but no crash outs like we've seen at times from DK.
Right.
He might be a new man too, but he also spent all of training camp locking with Joey Porter Jr., Jalen Ramsey, and Darius Slay, both of whom he has history with. So these wide receiver cornerback matchups are a lot of fun, and it's going to be very exciting to kind of home in on that a little bit Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for it. It's going to be a fun one to watch from afar. But I would be lying if I didn't say that I wish I was in there at Acrisure Stadium with all you guys in the press box. But you'll just have to wait for a month to go by, and I'll be out in Pittsburgh for a wedding. So I'm looking forward to making it out to the 4-1-2, but I'm excited to watch this game on the couch in the time being.
All right. Well, make sure you hit me up and hit up everybody from the Post-Gazette. Anything you want to add here, Andrew, or tell people where they can find you before I let you go?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at my usual handle, Andrew Destin1, or you can read all of my work at ap.org. As easy as that, just 5 letters and a period. So, really looking forward to watching this one, and grateful to chat with you. It's been a pleasure. Miss you a lot, Brian. Miss the rest of the PG gang a lot, and look forward to doing this again sometime in the future whenever the Steelers and Seahawks square off again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, hey, for the Pirates fans out there, hopefully you enjoyed reuniting with Andrew. And if you're a Steelers fan who's never heard of him before, make sure you give him a follow for this game while he's observing from back in Seattle. And thank you, Andrew, for joining us. We'll see you, man.
Pleasure's all mine. Thanks so much, Brian.
Later.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.